Perfect, thank you. Welcome everyone to Managing Stress and Anxiety. Thanks for joining me this second Friday of Naturopathic Presentations with Dr. Patrick Callas, ND. If this is your first time joining me, welcome. I'll give a brief introduction and then we'll launch into it. We have about an hour and there's lots of questions at the end, which I will leave time for. I will do my best to answer them and I can stay a little bit longer as needed. And if anything doesn't get answered then or you want to ask it in private, I will provide email, clinic phone number, and you can always forward questions to the foundation to forward on to me as well. So welcome, thanks so much for joining me. I am a naturopathic doctor. I've been in practice for 8 years now, just over. I've been seeing patients for a decade because I did 2 years of practice while doing my degree, which is part of what our training is. I'm registered in the province of British Columbia, so practicing here, I'm very grateful to be. We have one of the widest scopes in Canada, so we get to do quite a bit here as naturopathic physicians, which is great. For anyone who's not seen a naturopathic physician or not familiar with what we do, our approach is very holistic. We look at you as a whole person, not just a diagnosis, and we really try to get the root causes of what's happening for you and then offer all sorts of remedy options for you. I mean, preferably natural, preferably with little to no harm, and even better with more benefits. But you know, in BC and other provinces, and we also do have prescriptive rights so that we can prescribe medications when necessary, and also take people off medications and have that level of knowledge, just so you know. So I'm going to tell a little bit of my story because anxiety is something that's near and dear to me because I've struggled with it in the past and overcome it. It's not to say I still don't have days of anxiety, but I'm going to introduce myself by way of that. The only other thing I'll say is currently I do not live on Salt Spring Island anymore. I sold my practice there a few, goodness me, 3 years ago now to another great ND, Dr. Brad Dunstan, and I moved to make my family to Vancouver. And I've had a few different roles starting up and leading clinics, and I'm currently in the process of rebooting a clinic called Empower Health, which is a community-based integrative clinic that one of my good friends and colleagues, Dr. Ray Sarrington-Arno, started over 5 years ago. I'm really happy to be picking up the helm and helping out in that way. And if you want to know more, you can always contact me afterwards about that. Or if you're looking for a naturopathic physician or other integrative services like counseling, osteopathy, acupuncture, then you should give Empower Health a look. All right, let's launch into it. Today we're talking about stress and anxiety. So the roadmap we're going to be on today is we're going to talk a little bit about my story with anxiety, just to frame this, and then we're going to talk about stress and anxiety, and then how to lower both of them, which is the key part. But it's really important to understand what drives them as well, and just to pull apart the terms of what is stress, what is anxiety, what are different forms of it. So big things to look at for stress is acute versus chronic, which can be pretty important. And then we're going to look at some stress hormones and what we want them to do and what we don't necessarily want them to be doing, and how we can fix that, of course, or optimize it. And then for anxiety, we're going to look just briefly at the types of anxiety. It's not, you could really go down a rabbit hole here, but we'll define it a little bit. And then most importantly, look at most of the root causes. You'll see a note later on. I didn't really go into medications or drugs that can aggravate anxiety, but I will mention them in passing just because limited time, and I want to stay focused on some of the more natural pieces here. So my story with anxiety is I always ran towards anxiety when I was out of balance. If I wasn't eating well, stress was high at school or at work, if there was a lot of conflict, I used to just run into anxiety. I didn't know that's what it was called, because for me, it really started from a very young age. I remember being taken to the doctor because I had chronic headaches when I was a little boy. I mean, it might have been 6 or 7. And it was in retrospect that I was so anxious, it was causing me headaches and stomach upset. You know, anxiety can play out in different ways in the body. And just to define this a little bit early, because I'm going to go into it a bit more, stress can lead to anxiety. Think of stress as like enough stress and could cause a boiling over point as one cause or one contributing factor that can cause anxiety or trigger anxiety. Anxiety is the activation of part of the nervous system that makes us feel like this. it's like bad enough it's panicky. It is an aggravation of like a deep fear response in the body. It can cause numbness, tingling, lack of focus or hyper focus. It can cause shortness of breath. In severe cases where people have panic or severe anxiety, it can feel like a heart attack because the pressure on the chest, the rapid heart rate. It is the body preparing to run or fight from something, but in the cause usually of nothing outward. You know, we're not running away from a predator or any obvious fear. It's usually the buildup or a sudden acute stressor that's maybe not obvious to us that has triggered this part of the nervous system. And so for me, I had that as always sort of an undulating. It wasn't that I was always in anxiety, but it would come up under times of stress that I have this anxiety. And for me, it reached a fever pitch at the end of a relationship in my early 20s. And what had happened was I had a partner who was chronically ill or had developed a chronic illness that took a while to diagnose. And it really was difficult on our relationship. I was finishing my undergraduate degree and honors degree. Became very isolated. I also was working at the time, and one of my employers became manipulative and emotionally abusive. And I just sort of locked down. You know, at the time, that's the way that that kind of anxiety and stress drove me. We often talk about fight or flight as a fear response or a high stress response, and that's true, but freeze is also a natural and adaptive response that for some reason we tend to associate shame with, which shouldn't be, but in my early 20s, that's where I was frozen, stuck, really unhappy. And for me, it was this chronic ongoing stressors and pieces, you know, a relationship that was breaking down, and needing to get out of an emotionally abusive work situation, finishing my degree, and then all the negative self-talk that was going on in relation to that. Like, why can't I get myself out of this? I'm a smart person. Why can't I do this? So a lot of those pieces, and, you know, some predisposition genetically too, because there is anxiety that runs in my family. And I'm going to unpack what that means a little later on when we talk about some of the causes of anxiety, the genetic piece, and give it some real tangible, not just like it's your genetic fate and you don't have to deal with it, but, you know, if there's a clear family history, just like if there's a clear family history of, you know, heart attack, you know, the classic story of every man in my family dies before 60 of heart disease, doesn't mean that has to be your fate. If we take the right steps and move forward with our eyes wide open. Same with anxiety. If there's a clear pattern that lots of your family members have anxiety, it doesn't mean you have to be stuck with it and suffer it, but it does mean you're probably gonna be more prone to it, and you need to be more proactive in dealing with it in ways we're gonna talk about. So my buildup of all these stressors collided for me into post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms, which I didn't figure out until as I was sort of moving out of it, counseling, improving nutrition, getting back on track with exercise, self-education, and other perspectives, that I became hypervigilant. I couldn't sleep. I had nervous burnout. It's the first time I ever had suicidal thoughts, no plans, but I was just so stuck in my negative thought patterns and flashbacks about pieces that weren't even real, some of them, or they had been hyper exaggerated by the anxiety and stress, that I lived in that, and I wanted to escape in some way. And that was a new and very terrifying experience. I remember still the memory of lying in the bed in the apartment I was renting in Victoria, looking at the ceiling, just wishing I could get out of it, and suddenly understanding why some people unfortunately end up becoming suicidal and taking their lives. So for me, it was a big calling to turn my life around. And it's one of the steps to healing myself there that led me to become a naturopathic doctor, because I wanted to help people and not have them suffer as long as I did, or hopefully at all, with that level of anxiety. And, you know, even if anxiety is not a word that resonates with you, I'll talk about it a bit more, but we all experience some level of, whether you want to call it just high stress or use the word anxiety. You know, I think it's really a spectrum of natural behavior, and it's just when it goes on too long or is too severe and starts to interfere with your life where it becomes a problem. So I haven't had any significant anxiety for over 15 years now, aside from a few days this year, as you all no doubt can realize, has had lots of stressors, and so there's definitely some triggers. This year is one of the first years in 15 years where I've had days, but not weeks or months, only days where I'm like, wow, I remember this anxiety. I haven't really felt you in a long time. And as horrible as it is to be in it or revisit it, it was a real like, wow, I haven't really experienced this in that long. And I now know what to do and not let it run for weeks or months or get out of hand. or as good as severe as it did. But just acknowledge there's a lot of stress happening nowadays with COVID, with social disconnection, financial instability, and the world is changing. We're in a pivotal point in history, which is weird to be sitting in it when things kind of seem normal but completely unnormal. And I hear myself saying all the time, we're gonna find a new normal out of this, but we're in the uncomfortable changing process while we go through this pandemic, and I think other political and world changes right now as well. So stress, let's talk about stress. We're talking about managing or improving our response to stress. Unfortunately, we can't eliminate all stress. I mean, maybe if you become enlightened and you can just let everything roll off your back, that'd be amazing. It's a goal to strive to. But for most of us who want to live in the world, we want to learn how to manage it and deal with it. And the thing I want to talk about here, and why this silly picture, is stress kind of sneaks up on us, in that it's, and I like the analogy of it being like weights. You know, most of us can carry a 5-pound weight or 2-pound weight. We can carry several of them. We keep adding them on, but then at some point we'll reach a breaking point. That weight may seem insignificant, and just while you're in the midst of doing things or taking on stressors, you're like, oh, that's not a big deal. Oh, this is normal. I've dealt with this before. But it's the accumulation that becomes the problem, because arguably I'd say we're better as humans, we're better adapted to dealing with an acute stressor because it tends to come and go away. It's not to say we can't reach severe traumatic acute stresses that impact us and send us into anxiety or trauma, or have a post-traumatic stress disorder as the fallout of it. But typically what we're dealing with in the world nowadays, and it's harder for us to see sometimes, or kind of blindsides us. And what I'm going to focus on is more of those chronic stressors. There's ones that add up, you know, that you can lift and lift and lift until all of a sudden you can't. For anyone who's gone to the gym or not and just lifted weights, you know, it's like doing enough reps of an exercise. You're good. It seems easy. And then all of a sudden there's a switching point, and that's what happens to our nervous system. And it's harder to track because it doesn't tend to happen in a day. It's not like you're, you know, in the gym, in the analogy, just doing it and all of a sudden you know where your failure is within a minute. It's over weeks or months sometimes. And that's the tricky thing. So we want to become more aware of seeing those early and diffusing them. So part of this discussion that we want to really be aware of with stress is that our nervous system has 2 different components to it. We call this sympathetic and parasympathetic system. So let's dive into that. And what that means is sympathetic, almost counterintuitively, is actually the stress response in our body. It's fight, flight, or freeze. It's where we're under stress. You know, our pupils dilate, our pulse raises, blood goes flowing into our muscles, blood sugar gets dumped, so we can respond and use our muscles to run away, fight, or flee from something, or freeze. And of course, you know, with these sort of stressors, if your boss is stressing you at work, or an employee is stressing you at work, or a loved one is just pushing your buttons, fighting or running away is not always the best sensible option. It's not to say sometimes maybe taking a step aside and coming back from conversation isn't a great idea for us, but it's not, you know, the extreme of it is not sensible. So this is where we get, you know, into a place where, how do we deal with this in our modern world, in a social and working context and a healthy context? How do we deal with these? And part of that we're going to talk about soon, but also it is adding more weight onto the teeter-totter of our nervous system here. And so consider the sympathetic or fight, flight, freeze side being a lot of the time being tipped over, especially in 2020, by the elephant, as cute as he is here. And we want to keep putting more people, more lovely Pooh Bear friends, onto this parasympathetic, which is the rest, digest, and repair. It's also detoxify and a whole lot more, but it's all about rebuilding and repairing. And so that's the insidious thing about this, and I want you to get from the comment I just made, that rest, digest, and repair, if that's being hindered, or we're tilting way too much to the teeter-totter towards that heavy fear-based, stress-based elephant, that we're also compromising our ability to rest, repair ourselves. So we're actually going to get into a place where we're breaking our body down over time. And that's a big problem. And that's one of those deeper, longer term problems that we need to counterbalance. Because it's not that we can completely avoid stress or fight, flight, or freeze. It's that we want to have a dynamic, healthy teeter-totter. Think of kids playing on a teeter-totter where they're, you know, more or less equally balanced and they're having fun. That's what we want. We want to have fun. We want to play. We want to be able to dynamically go back and forth. And if it funks down onto the stress side, we want to be aware of that, and then have the ability to shift it back over. So that's what today is. We're going to bring more awareness to what's shifting us into that elephant side, the stress side, and then help ways we can keep shifting it by practices we can employ in our lives, things we can do right now, and of course some good supplements and dietary pieces, which are core of naturopathic care as well. So Breathing. Breathing is present. I'm sure you've all probably done some sort of breathing exercise before. I really like this quote by Joan Borisenko, who's written books and done lectures. You can look at her on YouTube. I'm not intimately familiar with her work, full disclosure, but I just really like this quote and just looked at a little bit of what she was doing and like resonated with me. She says, every day brings a choice to practice stress or to practice peace. And that's really true. It's really a choice. And it can be really frustrating if you're in or have recently been in stress or anxiety that's high or a lot of fear. To hear that it's a choice can be frustrating. And I want it to be clear. It's not always a conscious choice. Not that you can just be like, I'm stressed, I'm going to stop it right now. You know, it's not like I'm just simply making more of an effort or stopping it with your mind is going to work. Sometimes that busy mind is the problem. And so you can't really solve the problem at the level it's occurring. That's you know, it's a bit of a paraphrase of Einstein there, that would be an insanity if you keep trying to solve it the same way that it's occurring. So we want to do something different. So I want to invite you all to practice what I'm preaching here. It'll be good for me too, to slow down, take a little breath. And so one of the breathing techniques, and there are many out there, one I really like that can be really effective, has some really simple pieces. It's a good distraction and it just gets us into our body, because breath is presence. Breath is bringing us into right now in our body. So all I want you to do is make sure you're comfortable wherever you're sitting as much as you can. Don't be worried about any noises or distractions. They are what they are. We don't need to get rid of them or change them, unless it's like an alarm blaring in your face, then you might need to change that. But I want you to just get comfortable in your chair, and we're going to just do a 4 to 6 second breathing exercise, depending on your level of ability to breathe in and out. Let's start simple with 4 seconds. And what I want you to do is 2 things. Is going to be a breathing pattern. We're breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, breathing out for 4 seconds. We're going to do that. We're going to do that 5 times to just really get the nervous system calmed down. And at the same time, I want you to hold your tongue to the roof of your mouth throughout that, if you can. So tongue just goes to the palate of your mouth. And the reason is that relaxes your jaw, and that sends a signal all the way down the nervous system to relax the body a bit more. So I'm not going to hold my tongue to the roof of my mouth just so I can count the seconds allowed for us. Otherwise, it'll be like this. But I will do the other parts with you. So I invite you to close your eyes just to take away all that processing power that the visual cortex is taking away. It's a real hog. And so it's another way to calm our nervous system is to close your eyes or just dim the room. You don't have to do this part if you don't want to. We'll let us all know when we're done here. So closing our eyes, and when we're ready, breathing in for 4 seconds through our nose if we can. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. And out through your mouth and nose, or just your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. In. 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. And out. 1, 2, 3, 4. And in. 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. And out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Really get that breath out. I'm not going to count aloud on these last 2 just so I can get in on it with you, but I will use my hands. Here we go. And in. Hold. And out. One more time. In. And hold. And out. Good work. And just return to normal, easy breath. If you want to breathe a little deeply still, you go ahead, but easy, normal breath. The reason we take those deep breaths, like I said, tongue to the top of the mouth, relaxes the jaw, helps relax the body, helps send a signal to all the muscles and nervous system to relax. And that deep breathing, what we want to focus on is just really letting that belly expand in and out. And we can do that throughout the day. And the more we practice it, the more we'll do it naturally. So we actually take in a right amount of more oxygen, because often when we're stressed or anxious, or feeling fear, we do shallow, quick breath because we don't think about it. And we're actually getting less oxygen to our body. We're adding muscle tension to the body, and we're casting votes towards more stress and more likelihood of anxiety. By doing deep breaths, we start to open up our lungs, get more oxygen, more energy, more breath, more presence, and we get more carbon dioxide, which is waste, out of our body, and we get more into our body. We give her more nourishment, more presence, more relaxation. And it's just that easy, just 5 cycles, 4 times 3 times 5, whatever that adds up to, isn't that long, a minute or two. It's just doing it regularly whenever you can. Going for a walk, lunch, breakfast, when you wake up, it can be amazing, especially who here doesn't wake up with stress in the morning. I've experienced it the last few days where actually stress has been removed, life is going well, and I actually slept in. I have a toddler who's been going through poor sleep, and I got a few luxurious days of sleeping in because my lovely wife let me sleep in and tuck him in the mornings, which I usually am on morning duty. And those mornings are the ones where the stress came crashing in for me. And so having a practice like this to breathe and release is so, so valuable. Okay, thanks for doing a breathing exercise for me. You all did great, I'm sure, even though I can't see you. So what we're talking about here are stress hormones. You may have heard of cortisol. It's the primary stress hormone. It's a bit of a bad name being called a stress hormone, because don't think of stress as all bad. It's too much of it, or too much of it all the time, that's a problem. And the problem with it is because a cortisol level can become imbalanced. So think of cortisol as a waking hormone. It's meant to rise up early in the morning before sunset. In the curve here, which last lecture of you on, I got them flipped around a little bit when I was speaking the colors, but here, as it says, the blue curve is normal. We want cortisol to rise up early in the morning. So when we wake up, we feel ready to go. We feel ready to go. And if you're not feeling that, one of the reasons maybe your cortisol level is not reaching that normal level, or not reaching it at that time. Because there is as a side note, which I don't go into here, some of us are actually, our rhythm is naturally shifted. So we're meant to wake later in the morning and actually be more wakeful and present and optimally functioning in the daytime, which is called the chronotype. And that, it's the difference between someone who's a night owl at the one extreme to the person who's an early morning person. Most of us sit somewhere in the middle, and it's dynamic depending on what we habituate ourselves to do and other factors there. So most of us, simply put, are meant to have a cortisol that rises up and drops off by mid-afternoon and is low by evening. But what problem is, if we're under chronic ongoing stress, like we talked about, we start to respond in a way that is just like a diabetic person to their insulin, in that we have blood sugar that's constantly high and out of control, just like stress being high and out of control, being regulated or driven by cortisol. The body starts to become insensitive to the cortisol, just like a diabetic becomes insensitive to their own insulin levels. Because we need insulin to go up when blood sugar is high to lower the sugar and bring it to our cells. But if that happens too long, we can't do that. And similarly with cortisol, we become resistant to cortisol if we've been running on high stress for too long. And so the body has only so much capacity to make it. So it starts to shift the pattern, and it also starts to decompensate over time. So that's one of the things we want to get back into, is we want to shift that cortisol pattern. So if you've been someone who's like dragging yourself out of bed, you just feel exhausted, you're like, did the bus just hit me? I feel horrible. And I slept. Maybe you didn't sleep, but maybe you slept. Say you were one of those ones who's still getting sleep. And hopefully maybe it was restful, but you're still waking up, you're feeling flattened. It's because your cortisol level is probably low, like in the orange graph here. And then on the flip side, you get to the evening and you can't go to sleep. You're so tired, you feel exhausted, your body feels heavy, but you can't go to sleep. The reason for that is your cortisol is probably shifted, and you can't sleep because the wakefulness hormone and all that it drives, including blood sugar, it affects our sleep hormone melatonin, our sex hormones, everything. It is a controller in the system, and when it's running amok or out of balance, it is also a bully in the system as well that compromises everything else. Because when we're in stress, fight, flight, or freeze mode, forget about digesting, repairing, sex. All those things get altered by it. The body doesn't want to reproduce when it's under high stress. Sometimes it does. There's always exceptions where libido is a coping strategy in the individual body, where their libido actually feels higher for a period of time. But again, normally what it's going to do is suppress all those things, because it just wants to survive, wants to get away from the stressor. So we want to shift that cortisol back, because it has an impact on all the other hormones, and we're going to talk about some of them. And I mentioned adrenaline and noradrenaline here, which are the other like big brother stress hormones. Consider cortisol as a normal. If it goes up and down, morning, afternoon, that's what we want. It's actually something healthy to be in balance for us. And if it goes out of balance, or become really insensitive to it, then we start to recruit its cousin inappropriately, which is adrenaline and noradrenaline, or epinephrine and norepinephrine, just the different, same hormones, different names for the same thing. And think of it like cortisol is just sort of the normal, let's get up, let's do this when it's working. Yeah, good work. Yeah, energy, good. It gives you a gentle push. It's like your good, friendly coach. Adrenaline, when it has to drop in the system, especially when it's not like you're actually running or having to fight for your life, is like the Incredible Hulk showing up. And maybe you've been here at the end of a stressful day where you have a very like some little triggering thing with someone you love, or some minor thing. Like I've even had it where I knocked a cup over and it was like the end of the world because my stress response was so at the end of my rope years ago that I suddenly became the Incredible Hulk. I felt my heart pounding. I felt so angry and raging, and it's really hard to deal with someone in that phase. And it's, forgive yourself a little bit, because when adrenaline drops, you just have to kind of let it ride, and it exhausts the system afterwards further, because it's really caused a massive roller coaster to go. It can cause headaches afterwards and extreme fatigue. It can really regulate blood sugar levels. So we want to shift back to cortisol being healthy and normal, so that adrenaline and noradrenaline are only really used in true life or death situations, or at least in high levels in those. And so that's one of the problems going on, that sometimes hearing that can be a real relief if you've been feeling like your breaking point makes you really angry or irritable. And sometimes for us people, it's outward, we direct it outward, and sometimes we redirect it inward. And that's I tend to think, this is just Dr. Patrick's thought process and own experience a little bit here, is that those of us that tend to shift it in more or more often are probably a bit more prone to anxiety. And so we do need healthy outlets. Everyone does, but we in particular need healthy outlets to help release if we have that kind of adrenal response, or adrenal hormone response by adrenaline, noradrenaline instead of our cortisol. So we will get to balancing those out and other hormones in a sec here. So that was stress. So what is anxiety? Before I get into this, because all mental health conditions, we want to call them that, mental health conditions or diagnoses or disorders, sounds so heavy, have a stigma attached to them. I know I felt it when I was younger. I felt a certain amount of shame and guilt, and like there wasn't a lot of understanding. I remember in 2003 to 4, I was in New Zealand, and it was really refreshing to be there. And they had mental health ads. We see them more now, but back then I hadn't seen that before. Especially looking at American TV, it was always like, take this drug, take this drug. It wasn't, there's government ads in New Zealand that were just like, it's okay, there's support, you can get counseling, it's normal to have depression, anxiety. Like these are things that can happen in normal, healthy human beings, and we just need support. And I thought, wow, that's so amazing. I wish I was more aware of that or had that support. So I'm hoping that we're in a society, and I feel like we are more now, that's moving towards that. But I just want to take some of the stigma out. And my perspective on any mental health disorder, whether it be anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, all sorts of these things that have these labels, they are a spectrum of normal human behavior. And it's just when they start to shift to that side where it's becoming really prominent, it's becoming all the time, it's interfering with your life, where it's gone beyond a normal level, where it's become severe. But I want to emphasize, it is normal. We all feel some level of stress and anxiety, whether we want to call it that or not. We all have low moods at times. That's life. Whether we want to label it or have a severe enough level of it that we call it depression or not, that's up to you. Where that label lies. Don't let medical doctors necessarily dictate that to you. We do have a framework for that. If you want to call it melancholy, that's fine too. But just to say that it's a spectrum and it's a part of normal behavior, and it's, so I think we should make that okay for all of us. It's okay. You can say to yourself, it's okay. I've had anxiety, or I have anxiety. I've had depression, or I have depression. It's okay. Because we all move forward from that. Sorry, I just think of all the patients I've seen through it, and my own experience. That's triggers emotional response from my nervous system, because it's really meaningful to me. And that little graph, if you can't see it, which was my memory cue to talk about there, is just showing that most of us have sort of moderate mental health, which I think is a good analogy. Most of us, we're in that gray area. It's pretty good. The red side is what we call mental disorder when it gets severe enough. I was thinking I was pushing it that way. You get severe enough, whichever side you want to go. And then green is flourishing. And I hope, my hope, and certainly my aim as being a naturopathic doctor, is to get more people into flourishing, at least into the moderate, and working towards flourishing, giving you the tools to do that. That's what today's about. So more of us can flourish, because I don't think it's acceptable the level mental anguish that we accept and as normal and that we suffer with. And certainly on the flip side, those are in a lot more need, certainly with the rising cases of anxiety, depression, and suicide during this pandemic year. You know, I think it's important to acknowledge that and also to get the tools to get us out of that, which is why we're here. And accept that's okay, and empower ourselves to move forward, because denial is not going to get us anywhere. It's just going to dig us in and get us back, shift us no further forward and possibly backwards by digging our heels in and not being aware of what's going on. So simply put, what did I say anxiety was? I think it's in some ways it's about dwelling too much in the future. It's all these what ifs piling up in your head. And simply put, I would say depression is the opposite. We're not present in there either. We're over focused or hyper focused on the past. We can't let go of mistakes or things we perceive as mistakes or things that we perceive as stressors, even though they're gone. It's not to deny they didn't happen, but things in the past are gone. They're never coming back. I mean, other events can occur, but that specific event that occurred to you in the past that's depressing you is not coming back unless you can travel in time. And similarly, anxiety is this hyper exaggeration of a mechanism where the brilliant thing about us is we can see into the future in the sense that we can predict and plan for the future. It makes us, one of the things that makes us human, and we can plan and do all these amazing things, but if we can't get out of that and it starts to focus on negative or detrimental things, then that's where anxiety is. We're dwelling and when we're not actually living in the present or the now. And that's one of the reasons why I did that breathing exercise, and we'll talk about a few other things to get us present in the now. It's because all that is real is right now. The past is the past, and we can learn from it. It's not denying it happened. And the future is just a prediction of what happens. Because a little bit of really kind of cool neurobiology for you is our brain is actually a giant prediction machine. The reason that our infancy and toddlerhood, speaking as a father of a toddler, is so slow is that the amount of information that brain is taking in to create predictive mechanisms for everything from how to crawl to how to walk to how to learn languages to literally, and here's a good physical example I'm talking about, is that we don't, for the most part, perceive the world actually as it is in this moment. You might go, what is he talking about? It's actually predictions. Our brain is very efficient, and you could say lazy, but I want to say efficient, in predicting what is going to happen. So unless you're actually surprised by something, it's your brain predictions are largely filling in what is happening. This is one of the cool things about our brain, but it's also where we can get kind of tripped up and lose track of being actually present in the moment. We get lost in this predictive mechanism. So it's so valuable to cast votes and have practices that bring us into the now, and whatever that can be. Whether it is a spiritual practice for you or not, that's up to you. It doesn't have to be, but some people often that's the way it goes. It can simply be practices like breathing and connection, which we're going to go more into. Anyway, a little bit of a tangent there. I hope you're following me. If not, we'll get back to the nuts and bolts of things now. Anxiety is the most common psychiatric disorder, and just all that means is mental imbalance. Again, don't let those words feel too heavy. It's the most common thing. I've experienced it in the flavor of general anxiety disorder, if you want to give it a label, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Myself, and they certainly have different flavors and severities. I'm not going to go into that. I don't think the classifications are what we want to focus on right now. It's not to say they don't have value for gaining understanding and perhaps better control of the type of anxiety you or a loved one might be experiencing. But I also think sometimes in medicine, by over-explaining things and pigeonholing people into boxes, it can be detrimental. It doesn't necessarily capture you as an individual. So it's I look at these diagnoses as a starting point, a place for initial understanding, but not a box to stay in, because you're not your anxiety, you're not your depression. It is just something you may be dealing with, moving through, and need some support to resolve over your lifetime or just in this moment. So the common forms of anxiety there are generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, which is where we get more into the feeling panic, the rapid heart rate, where it can feel more like in severe cases, people are having a heart attack. It emulates symptoms, including shooting pain down the left arm, chest pressure, pain, shortness of breath. It can feel like you are dying in a panic attack, like you are dying. I've had them, and that's what it feels like. But guaranteed you are not. I've had lots of patients go to the emergency room with panic attacks, and they test them and they have to say, sorry, it's a panic attack. And they may offer some medication there, like a benzodiazepine, like Valium, to help, or maybe not. And hopefully they're really progressive, a medical doctor you're seeing or nurse, they will offer some of the things I'm offering or suggesting now for practices for reducing that stress and realizing that even though panic feels horrible in the body, it is not actually harmful in of itself. Social anxiety disorder, so when social interaction or being in a social setting is the issue that, I can relate to that a little bit. I'd say I have flavor of that when I'm out of balance. As much as I light up and love to be in a room, it's only once I've kind of adapted, I can flip between the wanting to be the social butterfly and glowing to leave me alone. I'm going to be the guy in the back corner having a one-on-one conversation with someone. Phobias or fears, which here fears are normal, but disproportionate fears, like, like if you see a spider and you feel like the world's ending, or you have a panic attack because of it. I used to have a phobia of heights, and phobias can be overcome. I've gone rock climbing since, and I never thought I would do that. I remember driving by the Grand Wall, which is the big climbing face in Squamish, and literally having my hands break out into cold sweat, shortness of breath, chest pressure, just looking at it. I wasn't even considering climbing it, just going by it, imagining people on it used to give me that level of dread. And now it's not that I could go up a pitch like that and have no fear whatsoever, but there are ways to overcome these. So it's disproportionate fear is a phobia, and it could be of anything. Obsessive compulsive order is when you have repetitive obsessive behaviors that you get locked into. It can be very severe, things like hand washing or counting. Again, varieties. I think people who tend to be very organized, sorry to pick on you a little bit, but like hyper organized, really want to categorize everything, have some degree of this, and it could be serving them. But again, it's when it goes way out of balance that can be a problem, where it dominates your life, and it can be really severe. It can obsessive compulsive disorder, when it's at the far spectrum, can be one of the harder forms of anxiety to treat. But don't let that discourage you. If that's something you struggle with, or someone who struggles with, it is treatable. But just be aware it can be a little bit of a longer road to resolve it or to really improve it. And the post-traumatic stress disorder, which is usually linked to a significant major stressor, or it can be repeated smaller or moderate stressors just building up in the system, which was more my case. I wouldn't say I had one dramatic stress. Wasn't in war or witness, a horrible death. And part of that can also be based on how resilient is your nervous system. Some people are going to be more resilient to significant stressors, and some of us are going to be a little more sensitive, given that some anxiety or worrywartness runs in my family. I'd say we're a little more sensitive, and I don't look at it as a weakness at all. I think also what lets me be more empathetic and tuned in to those around me, to my patients, to my family. So it's a strength that way, but it's also, I have to be very careful about taking care of myself and creating boundaries around how I'm tuning in. So those were American stats. You could read the fine print. You're like, why do you give US stats? It just look good for listening to 6 disorders. Anxiety is really common in Canada. You can read the stats there, but it can affect about 2 out of 1,000 people an average year. So it's really common. It affects more women than men, which is true of a lot of mental health conditions for various reasons. And again, I think it goes a little bit, this my own perspective, goes back to women being more emotionally empathetic, intuitive, at least in a cultural context. I don't know if that's necessarily a biological imperative, although, to be mothers, not that it's, again, your biological imperative, but for those who choose to be mothers, I think it's, it is a part of the biology that is helpful for that. But I think it's a lot of that's culturally and socially driven. And so those who are, in tune more may go out of balance this way more when things are stressful, or they're kind of carrying the weight of family or loved ones or people in the workplace with them. And I can relate to that as someone who I would say I have more stereotypically feminine energy, which is a word I just use for access. I don't want to relate to that here or there, and I don't necessarily want to gender things, but just take it with air quotes. So really common anxiety. Let's look at the causes of anxiety. If you look in the medical literature, they'll talk about stress, which I'll show you a quote about in a second, and just some genetic predisposition, and they will talk about medication or drug-induced anxiety. It's kind of standardly, at least, that's where they go. It's pretty limited, and as you can see here, we're going to talk about a whole bunch more things, which we're going to run through pretty quickly here. And we're going to do this with an eye for 2 of the naturopathic principles, which is tole causum and tole totem. You all know Latin, right? So I put what that means is identify and treat treat the causes, or the root cause, like the underlying cause, and also treat the whole person, meaning you're an individual, and I don't think your anxiety is exactly like everyone else's. I don't think your obsessive compulsive disorder or your post-traumatic stress disorder is exactly the same. They may have characteristics, And even if the characteristics are the same, the road to get you to better may be different than the person beside you, even if they have the same diagnosis, which I think that's one of the tenets of naturopathic medicine, and what I would argue, just good medicine. You're not just a diagnosis, you're not just a number, you're not just a limb or a brain that's out of balance. You're a whole person that has a complex system that you live within, social and cultural and work, and also your own complex, miraculous human body that you live in, which is incredibly complex. And so getting back to balance, normal, is going to require some individualization. So that's where I will be on. So stress we've talked about. Just a good quote here from the Mayo Clinic. It said a big event or buildup of smaller stressful life events may trigger excessive anxiety. For example, death, the family, work stress, or ongoing worry about finances, or a pandemic, my add-on, obviously. And here I would say it's certainly one of the known obvious triggers. You get too much stress, it starts to like fray or burn out the nervous system, and then you get pushed into anxiety or panic. 3 top stressors, anyone know? Oh, you probably saw. I was going to ask, but just to move along here, three top stressors that usually come up in this order are death, divorce, and moving. Yay. And not to say that others could not be in there, they're just the top ones. Is a fun little trivia question there. So nutrient deficiencies that can cause or contribute to anxiety. B vitamins, here I just picked 3, whoops, and sorry, excuse me, the vitamin D is meant to not sit under B vitamins. That was a formatting error there, but folate, which is vitamin B9, around 50% of North Americans are deficient or don't convert or B vitamin folate into its active form, which is called methyl tetrahydrofolate, or MTHF. And so that means if you're eating it in your diet and you don't convert it well to its active form, that dietary forms of folate may not be enough. And that's assuming you're even getting an adequate amount in your diet. So it's all about conversion or getting an active form, which is one of the things we'll talk about under treatments in a sec. Vitamin B6, which is known as pyridoxine, it's a really common one that's given for nausea in pregnancy during, if you or your loved ones are pregnant and got nausea. It can help with that. It's essential for NTs, those are neurotransmitters. Although we have a whole handful of them, the most commonly known ones are acetylcholine, dopamine, serotonin, and Gaba. There's a whole other topic there that I just want to mention in passing, that there's this real cool quiz you can do online that I think I will have to send the link separately. I meant to put it in, but I don't think I got time to do it last night. But if you go to Braverman questionnaire, Dr. Braverman has a free quiz. It's very thorough. It looks at all the 4 main neurotransmitters I listed, and you just do it. It's free online. It's anonymous, and it gives you a result. And what it looks at is what neurotransmitters might be low or deficient, because Dr. Braverman argues that all of us have neurotransmitters that may run a little bit deficient. It's just kind of who we are or who we are under stress. And to know that gives us a more targeted way of balancing our mental state, including addressing things like stress and anxiety. So again, Braverman questionnaire, you just Google it and look for the Braverman's, his actual site. One, you can do it online, again, free and anonymous, and it's just a really cool tool to see. It gives you a little chance for self-reflection and self-knowledge, which is really a really important part of regulating stress and anxiety, as well as moving your health journey forward. It's self-awareness. So vitamin B6 when it's low, can mean that it also means some of your neurotransmitters may run low. So it's really important to get enough, or not just enough, not adequate amounts, but optimal amounts. So if you're looking on the back of a container that says your recommended daily intake, or RDA or RDI, is 100% with this, it doesn't mean you're getting optimal levels. It just means you're getting enough not to be deficient. And vitamin C is a real easy one to mention here, not that it's one of the ones I'm focusing on, but if you get 100% of your vitamin C based on the RDA, that doesn't mean you're in optimal levels of vitamin C. It just means you have enough not to get scurvy, which is a pretty low baseline. I mean, it's better than getting scurvy, but optimal levels may be significantly, like 2-3 times higher. So that is we always want to aim higher for optimal health, because we want to support ourselves. Vitamins we need to take in every day, with rare exceptions. Vitamin D being one we don't need every day, but we do need regularly. But all the water-soluble vitamins, like the B vitamins and the vitamin C, we need daily. And then niacin, or vitamin B3, you may have heard of it as you take a big dose and cause flushing, which can be a surprise if you're not expecting it. It actually is anxiolytic, meaning it helps lower anxiety, and it also lifts mood a little bit, or quite a bit, depending if you're deficient. So vitamin B3 is very important to maintain normal levels. Otherwise, you can be more prone to anxiety, depression, or they can become a worse character for any of those B vitamins. And arguably all the B vitamins play a role, but those are the ones that I feel are the most important ones. To go back to folate just for one quick sec, there are cases of bipolar disorder, which is a disorder where people go from severe depressive state and then flux up to mania or manic state where they're just hyperactive. It's like they're on stimulants almost. They fluctuate wildly, and there are subtler forms of that as well. And again, I think about normal human behavior. Who hasn't kind of been low and high, or had a real high and then felt a bit of a low? But again, bipolar, it's severe. But there are cases of bipolar where people had this folate deficiency, and by supplementing with it alone, had a most significant effect for them. I've seen a few cases where it was more significant than any medication that was given. And bipolar is complicated. I'm not saying that is the answer for everyone, but it certainly is a simple thing to try, or is an additional piece to try to help stabilize mood in that case. So sorry, a little tangent there about bipolar, which I think is important, because I have a close friend who struggled with it, and I've seen a few patients with bipolar, and I've seen them really struggle, and I've also seen them have things that optimize how they live and how they can function and thrive. Vitamin D. I put a note there if you weren't on last week. Fun party question for you, I guess virtual party question at this point, or email you can send to someone. Did you know that vitamin D is not a vitamin? Or you can ask, is vitamin D a vitamin? It is actually not a vitamin. I mean, it is, because the vitamin is kind of a weird category. We do need to take it externally if we're not getting enough sun exposure. But what I mean by it not being a vitamin is it is built out of cholesterol. Yes, cholesterol, that thing that we're supposed to mind not getting too much of in our system, but all hormones are built out of cholesterol. Their backbone is made out of cholesterol: estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, melatonin, vitamin D. So vitamin D is actually a hormone, is the sunshine hormone. I just put it here because that's a fun fact for you, and we still call it a vitamin. And it certainly plays a big role in stabilizing mood. I'd say more for depression or low mood is vitamin D important. It's one of the reasons why we get people can get seasonal affective disorder or SAD. And welcome to Canada, right? Whose mood isn't a little bit lower in the winter with the shorter days and less sun. And part of that is because we're not getting as much vitamin D from the sun hitting our skin and converting vitamin D. So it is very important that everyone supplement with vitamin D. I don't talk about it specifically later in remedies. And I would argue that Health Canada's recommendation for 1,000 IUs a day for an adult is far too low, because, and I'll just put it this way, how would it make sense if someone weighs 105 pounds that they would take the same dose as someone who weighs 250 pounds? It doesn't. And there's a lot more factors at play there, including genetics, your actual level, your skin tone. The paler you are, the easier it is to convert vitamin D, because you don't have as much protection from the UV rays of the sun. But there's a whole bunch of factors there. And I would just simply argue that 1,000 IUs per day of vitamin D in the winter is not adequate. The average Canadian vitamin D level is deficient. We run around a 55. The adequate level to get out deficiency is 75 nanomoles per milliliter. And optimal, based on all current evidence, seems to be 120 to 130, so almost 3 times the level that most of us are sitting. So definitely get some vitamin D in you, because we're probably not all traveling to sunshiny locations this winter. And if you are, lucky you, and be safe in traveling nowadays with COVID, obviously. And then all minerals will play some role in if they're low in aggravating anxiety, but most off zinc, iron, if it's low, selenium and iodine. Those last two, selenium and iodine, link into one of the other causes we're going to talk about in a sec, hormone balance. I'm going to be really brief in this, but poor digestion plays a huge role. 80% of our serotonin is assembled and stored, which is a major neurotransmitter for making us feel calm. And one of the main medical treatments we give for anxiety is to give serotonin reuptake inhibitors, basically a medication that helps us recycle our serotonin levels. This would be something like Paxil. It helps recycle serotonin, and it can be effective. I'm not opposed to it. I have actually prescribed some of these medications occasionally, but it's not my go-to and not my first preference, because they come with certain risks, including actually worsening anxiety and even depressive states. For the first few weeks, we adjust to them, and it can be hard to wean off some of them. So, it's all about using them well at the right time, of course. But 80% or so of our serotonin is held and assembled in our gut. So you better believe if you've got digestive issues, your serotonin levels are not normal. And that's a major influence. And the reason we think of, we talk about the gut as our second brain is for two reasons, two major reasons. One is more current than we understand it. One is because the amount of nervous tissue there is huge. We have something called the enteric nervous system, which is just means intestinal nervous system. It's massive. It's massive. It's the only, besides from our brain and brainstem, it's the most nerves in our entire body. So we actually can form impressions and like preemptive thoughts and feelings from our gut. So if it's upset, if it's inflamed, if it's out of order, that's a problem. And inflammation, irritation from our gut can easily translate into that directly into our brain and indirectly as well. So we want to take really good care of it. And the second part that's newer and that's shown there in the image is the microbiota, those bacteria and more, all the little microorganisms that live in our gut and actually weigh several pounds if you took them out, put them into a pile. They do so much for us. And they're actually like their own complex multicellular organism that lives in us. And they can help our mental state or they can harm it if they're out of balance. So we got to take care of those things to have good mental health. So we want to have good digestion, not poor digestion. So we'll talk a little bit about some remedies for that later. Hormones, which is a whole topic into itself, but hormones that can cause regular anxiety or worsen stress and anxiety, cortisol resistance or out of balance cortisol, which we talked about. Cortisol directly influences insulin and blood, and that influences blood sugar. So, I mean, if your blood sugar crashes, what do you feel like? Foggy headed, you can go into a state of panic or anxiety. And so if your blood sugar is irregular, your nervous system can constantly be going between states of anxiety or low-grade anxiety and fear because it's like freaking out and it might not have enough, the brain in particular may be freaking out that it doesn't have sugar. So these all tie in together. Think of the hormones, and I said it last lecture, like a symphony. We want them all to play in harmony together. And so balancing hormones is really important. In this case, we want to focus on cortisol and thyroid. Thyroid, which is the gland sits below our Adam's apple, can go out of balance really. It's pretty common to go out of balance. A little more common in women than men. And high or low thyroid can actually cause anxiety. It's most commonly known in medical literature that high thyroid can cause panic anxiety because it's like everything gets revved up. We're running too hot, our heart rate's up. It's too much stimulation. Think of the thyroid like the thermostat that controls not only other hormones, but our body temperature and everything, our metabolism, all the processes in our body. Sort of like the coach, I guess, and the thermometer, or the thermostat. Low can also cause panic or anxiety. It's less common. Usually it's more depression, low mood, weight gain, everything kind of slows down, but it actually can cause panic. It's one of the causes of postpartum depression in women. It's probably the most common one that's been often overlooked is actually a low thyroid after pregnancy. It's not the only cause, but it is a common one. High estrogen can cause anxiety because it's too stimulating, especially when it's not counterbalanced by progesterone. Low progesterone can cause anxiety, and as well as can low testosterone. Now, obviously, the estrogen progesterone balance is going to influence women a bit more than men, and testosterone is going to influence men more than women. But all of these play a role in men and women, just to varying degrees, so they all can be important. Toxins. This is a whole other big topic. But we want to limit or avoid toxins as much as possible. The Mad Hatter is that image there from the Lewis Carroll novel. He has a caricature of mercury toxicity. Mercury and lead are the most common toxins I see when I test heavy metal levels in BC. And mercury and lead are both neurotoxic. They affect and impact the brain, and they can cause anxiety. I had one patient who had very high anxiety with tendency towards panic. We fixed her digestion, and like she said, she got 70, 80% better. And the thing that got her to 100%, anxiety went away, and she could live life again, and was like super grateful, which was, I'm so happy for her. I don't think it's anything amazing about me. I just happened to right place, right time with the right recommendations, which is good medicine. But she had to clear mercury levels out. That was the last piece. She had to highlight mercury levels, and clearing those out is what took her over the top in resolving her anxiety. So it can be a big piece if those levels are high in people, and we all get low-grade exposure over time. It's just a matter of what's your exposure level and how do you eliminate it. And then pesticides. Roundup Ready or glyphosate, which is in about 80% of food, at least from the US, that's not organic, is not directly neurotoxic, but it is an antibiotic. That's the way it acts, and also strips minerals out of the gut, both things that can indirectly cause anxiety, like we've been talking about. So reducing exposure or eliminating that is important. and even antibiotic use, which I don't go into medications due to time here. We want to limit or use only when necessary because it can have a long-term impact on our mental health. And pertinent to us on the West Coast here is mold, mold exposure. If you get a high exposure and it lurks around in our gut, it can cause toxins that cause anxiety. And another big topic here, genetics. Here I'm just going to focus on nutrigenomics or digestive health. Our genetic ability to deal with certain nutrients. This can play a big role. It's one of the reasons why some of us may be more susceptible to poor diet or certain foods in our diet. We're not getting enough nutrients. And on the flip side, we may do so much better by taking a multivitamin mineral, by improving your diet, by getting that extra bit of active methylfolate. It can make a huge difference due to the genetics, which is sort of like how the system deals with the foods and nutrients we're taking and what drives those requirements. It also plays a role in detoxification. So how well do we eliminate lead and mercury if we're all being exposed to some level through water, food, and air? Our genetics play a role there. And the great thing about this kind of genetics is we're not talking about incurable diseases like Huntington's. We're talking about factors that we can influence through lifestyle and exercise. And they also play a role, genetics play a role in neurotransmitters and so much more. Just cognizant of the time here, sort of rush through, but let's get through. We talked about anxiety. Let's talk about some solutions, and then we'll get to questions. The key to resolving anxiety is to remove barriers. That's the viewpoint of naturopathic medicine. It's not to say we might not offer something that offers a remedy that offers some support and some symptom management until we can get to the root cause and resolve it. But we want to remove barriers. That may include drugs and medication. And again, I'm not going into that, but just in passing, things like caffeine, especially if you're sensitive to it, can increase anxiety and stress. Although it's not that the right amount at the right time can't be helpful or even positive, but too much, too often for the wrong person who's already starting towards anxiety or panic, you want to avoid or limit. And certain medications, medications that are stimulant, medications that are like corticosteroids, all can increase anxiety in the system. So we have to be cautious or just be aware when we're using them that that's something we may need to manage until we can reduce or remove those medications safely and effectively. And we also want to repopulate our body with good nutrients, but also our gut flora, which I mentioned a little earlier, and then do any repair we need to do, including repairing damage to our body, to our nervous system, to our gut. We want to rebuild and repair the system. And the key to that, and it's a bit of a naturopathic bias, and is the gut. The gut's the center of us all. It's the interface with our environment, how we absorb nutrients into the body, which is the medication we take every day, which can help us or harm us, depending what foods we take. Certainly eating a lot of processed, chemical, high refined sugar, high caffeine, high salt foods, things that are not what our body needs in high amounts or at all sometimes, especially if there's weird chemicals in them. Maybe you're reading the back. If you're reading the back of your food and going, I need a chemistry degree to know what that is, probably something you shouldn't take. It might not be directly harmful, but it's probably not helpful to you. So getting back to whole foods is really important. And we want to resolve any digestive complaints. And the tricky thing with digestion is you might have no obvious digestive concerns, like you might not have like severe ongoing gas, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, nausea, but you still could actually have digestive problems going on that are not obvious to you. It could be very subtle. Some people have this sort of bittersweet ironclad gut, as it were, and that they can have severe irritation and aggravation where they're like literally like bleeding in their intestines, but they don't feel it, which is just the weird way that the guts can be wired. I would say I'm on the opposite, being sensitive. I have very sensitive guts. I can feel every little thing, and sometimes wish I had a bit more of a ironclad gut, but certainly I say that somewhat mostly jokingly because it allows me to pivot and fine tune a little bit more clearly when my digestion is going out of balance, because that will definitely impact mental health. One thing I didn't say is that I also, when I had high anxiety, I had very bad heartburn, indigestion. I tended to get really diarrhea really easy. So my system was really sensitive and aggravated, again, linking to the bacteria and the serotonin, the absorption of nutrients was all out of balance. And for me, when anxiety got bad, I didn't know the difference between heartburn up here and anxiety. They felt like the same swirling, burning thing. I just wanted to like rip it out of my body when things were bad. It was so visceral for me. So a part of resolving digestion is reducing inflammation. You want to do some tests for things in your diet, like food sensitivities or allergies that might be causing problems. The thing I want to emphasize there is a lot of food sensitivities or intolerances are not a forever thing, but they're good to know if your digestion is going out of balance, you're getting a lot of allergies or skin irritation like eczema or psoriasis. Those are all signs that your gut is probably unhealthy. And even a lot of like brain fog or poor concentration can be a pretty strong sign that your gut is unhealthy or happy, like we've been talking about. So that's a good time to, if you haven't done it, to test food sensitivities, also known as food intolerances, and also allergies, because removing them will remove something that's causing inflammation and causing imbalance in the gut. And if you do that effectively, those are foods you could reintroduce into in moderate ways down the road. It's certainly part of my journey. I had to remove a lot of foods. I remember looking at my food sensitivity test, which looked at 120 foods, and I thought, what am I going to eat now? Like just vegetables and fish? That was the only things that weren't triggering me, pretty much. And that is what I do for a while. But now I can eat a much richer diet, and even foods like dairy and wheat that used to really trigger me, I can eat in moderation now with little consequences, as long as I'm tending to my gut health. And eating your serotonin-rich foods can be really effective as well. And one thing I skipped there, but we talked about before, is getting a good amount of probiotics or fermented foods into your diet. So let's talk about serotonin-rich foods briefly. Anyone it's just after 1 or 2 now, so sort of kept you long. I'm gonna go a few more minutes and then answer questions. And if you have to go, I understand. Thank you for joining me. You can watch the recording afterwards, no doubt, if your time is short. Here's a list of serotonin-rich foods. It's not an exhaustive list. I certainly highlighted a few things there, like salmon is great. Other fish can be really great as well. Salmon, nice pink salmon, is a really good source of the tryptophan, which we need to build serotonin, which is an amino acid in it. Nuts and seeds, turkey, as well as pineapple, eggs, and cheese there. But again, there are other foods, but those are foods, if you're feeling anxiety or a lot of high stress, you may want to get some more of these in your diet to make you feel more centered and calm, and start to sort of reverse engineer things that are irritating your nervous system and your gut potentially as well. Of course, if any of these are food sensitivities or allergies, pick another food on that list, or pick other foods that are rich in tryptophan. Mushrooms, I should put mushrooms. They're also a really good source of tryptophan as well. Supplements that can help optimize your digestion, probiotics. You could eat fermented foods as well. Here, yogurt will tend not to be enough, although it's good to add in if you tolerate dairy or want to get like a coconut or almond yogurt. That's fine. I just say watch the sugar intake in those. Better to get one that's low sugar or no sugar, and add your own berries or some dates or some natural occurring sugars to them if you can. Or you can take probiotic supplements as well to get good amounts in. It's to rebuild that gut population. The best time to take any probiotic is with food. You want to give them a ride in with the fiber and other foods you're eating. You want to give them something to eat. Even though you're increasing your stomach acid when you eat, you want to give them that ride in, because they're going to get to where they need to go. Think of it as giving them a bus ride into the intestines, so with food. Omega-3 fatty acids, which come from seafood, but you can also get from vegetables, vegetarian sources like walnuts, flax seeds, ground or flax oil, hemp hearts, or hemp oil, to name a few. And now L-glutamine is really good for healing if your digestion is upset. It's a really inexpensive. It improves exercise recovery of sore muscles. It's a pretty tasteless, easy thing to add into foods or drinks. And if you want to get a food source of L-glutamine, then I would say you want to add in some cabbage, because it's one of the richest food sources of L-glutamine. Here, though, if you want to take a scoop, which is about 3 to 5 grams L-glutamine, that's a good amount therapeutically. In terms of cabbage, you need to take about a cup of cabbage in a day to get equivalent amount of glutamine. And cabbage has lots of other benefits, especially that bright purple cabbage, full of other good antioxidants. But if that doesn't appeal to you, then take the powder if you're trying to heal your gut. Ginger, also good for healing the gut, especially if you're getting nausea. It's been shown in clinical studies to reduce nausea in the body, in whatever form you feel like you can get in. The fresher the better, or more active the better. And then quercetin, which is a bioflavonoid that comes from mainly pale or light green fruits and vegetables, mostly in concentration, can really help heal the gut and reduce allergy reactions in the body. It also has some antiviral properties, which were being researched partly through a Canadian researcher in regards to COVID. So that's something you could check out if you're curious to know more about that I did mention last time in passing as well. Quercetin, great. The dose for it therapeutically to help heal digestion or reduce allergy would be 1 gram 2 to 3 times a day with food. And it's even better when you take in some vitamin C at the same time. Calming nutrients. So here are a bunch of great nutrients to help optimize your body, as well as some hormones, because I put vitamin D in there as well. I also put in progesterone. So you can read that list if you're going to take B vitamins, which are great. You know, if anyone is, if you're, you know, they get depleted by lots of things, alcohol, a lot of medications, including birth control pill, deplete B vitamins. Stress depletes B vitamins, so it's a good thing to get in. You want them bioavailable or active form. So if you look on the back of the bottle, if you look at folate, vitamin B9, or vitamin B12, they need to say methylfolate, which is the active form of vitamin B9, or methylcobalamin, which is the active form of B12. That's a good sign of a good multi-B vitamin or multivitamin, because those are the active forms of those B vitamins, and the likelihood is that all the other ones are going to be their active forms as well. So it's important you take the form that's immediately usable for the nervous system, because it's just the best value, and often it costs you almost nothing more for something so much more effective. Omega-3 fatty acids, there is studies showing that it does reduce anxiety, partly probably because it reduces inflammation and is good for the gut, but also it helps wire and lubricate the nervous system. Essentially, you want to get 3 or 4 grams of it a day, including at least 200 milligrams, preferably 400 milligrams of something called DHA, which is one of the active types of omega-3. So if you look on the back of the omega-3 bottle, DHA will give you an amount, and we want 200 to 400 milligrams at least a day in that 3 to 4 grams of omega-3s, which you should be getting in a good quality omega-3 supplement or an omega-3 rich diet. Progesterone can really calm the nervous system. Now, obviously, if you're a man, we're not going to give you large amounts of progesterone, but even something like 60 milligrams orally, especially if you're having poor sleep or trouble sleeping with stress before bed, can actually be very helpful. It's not going to cause any feminizing effects. If that's a concern, it's not enough. It's just there to help relax the nervous system. And certainly it's more beneficial in women if you already have low progesterone or relatively high estrogen, because it will help balance it out. Although 60 milligrams may not be enough, and that's where testing your actual hormone levels becomes really crucial. Some really great herbs here that I'm just going to run through. Ashwagandha, which is an Ayurvedic herb or East Indian herb, and Eleutherococcus senticosa, which is known as Siberian ginseng, is very calming. Even though it's a ginseng, it's not a stimulating. It's sort of like we call false ginseng. It's more balancing, helps regulate the nervous system. So does ashwagandha, very balancing. And also ashwagandha helps regulate hormones like progesterone and DHEA, which is great. Rhodiola, if you're athletic or just want to increase your exercise tolerance, rhodiola is a high mountain flower that helps calm the nervous system down, but also increases your ability to exchange oxygen, or what we call VO2 max. So it's a good regulating, calming, without making you sleepy herb. All these herbs I've listed, none of them are sedating in of themselves, but taken at the right time, like rhodiola or reishi, can actually help you with sleep. They help set the curve of cortisol back into a normal flow over time. Medicinal mushrooms, I'm a big fan of, love them. Reishi is very calming. I've seen that work when people have taken a lot of their natural remedies, like we've taken valerian or skullcap, melatonin, and they found them not to be very successful or not successful for long. Then reishi would be one you should try, because it can be very effective. And while I use reishi for lots of reasons, including immune regulation, it's one that my patients really taught me for sleep. I hadn't really thought of it before bedtime until I heard again and again from certain patients that it was really effective for them, which was awesome. And then lion's mane is one of the many medicinal mushrooms you can use to balance stress and anxiety. I mentioned it here, and that strange bunch of letters is DMN is the default mode network, which is a circuit in the brain. And more neuroscience, here we go. It is a circuit that allows us to predict into the future. What do we say about that? Too much predicting, getting stuck there. That's part of what anxiety is. And also this default mode network allows us to see into the past, to use the past and refer to memories to make decisions. So again, if we get stuck back there, there's arguably a form of depression. So the default mode network is what allows us to look back and forward. And if it's overactive, we are not in the present. We're constantly caught in one or two of those other places, or possibly both of them alternating way. So lion's mane in bigger doses, which is 3 grams or more, possibly higher, actually calms the default mode network down. So that's one of the unique things about that specific medicinal mushroom. It actually has an effect there. All medicinal mushrooms calm the nervous system and help regulate anxiety, but there's a little extra added bump. Lion's mane also is good for memory or focus. So if you're looking to do some studying, or you find your focus and concentration is poor, lion's mane is a great one to add into the mix for you, for calming the nervous system and for focusing. GABA is a fantastic neurotransmitter that's very safe, and you can take it orally, and it calms the nervous system. The great thing about it, it's probably the fastest acting thing here on the list, and probably followed by progesterone if you're to take progesterone. It works within minutes, and it's going to be effective. It can be very effective. I've seen it dramatically improve people's lives. It's not the only cause of anxiety, having low GABA or insufficient GABA, but if it is driving it, it can have a really profound effect. Safe to take for anyone. The only caution I say, if your GABA, if you get into higher doses of GABA, which would be going to 1,000 to 2,000 milligram, which is safe, but when you get to that dose, you need to be cautious that it can cause constipation. So if you start taking GABA, you start to get constipated or have trouble having bowel movements, you need to back the dose off and or look at other ways to improve bowel regularity, because we don't want constipation. That's not going to help your nervous system or your body. And lots of good calming teas you can read there. Chamomile is one of my favorites because, and you can certainly add something to sweeten it like honey if you like, but chamomile is great because it's a bitter, which helps digestion, but also it helps calm the nervous system. Okay, I know we're going over. Finally, calming practices. You can read through these. The only two I want to highlight, and I want to end on one, is the one that may be the least clear here, is squashing ants. Ants are automatic negative thoughts. And so we all have automatic negative thoughts that we pattern from childhood and onward. I'm not good enough. I'm not fast enough. I suck at this task. We all have them. And the R there is something. Remember, ants, you want to squash them, the poor ants, not the real ants, just our mental ants. And we can do that through R, matey. R is awareness of our negative thoughts is the first step. Oh, wow, I'm saying that about myself. Or, oh, in this moment, I'm feeling this. And a good way to become aware is when you're feeling anxiety or stress. If you feel body symptoms, or do a breathing practice and just tune in as part of that breathing practice. Where am I feeling discomfort? Am I feeling my guts are churning, or pressure in my chest, or my arms feel heavy? That awareness of our body can then also lead to the space and awareness of thoughts that might be driving it. Because it's the funniest thing when we check in and breathe. You might be like, my guts are churning and unhappy. And when you sort of pause, take a breath, take a walk, do something to calm down, or at least remove yourself from the stressful situation for a moment. You may also be like, my gut really makes me think of feeling inadequate, or this fight I had with my partner, or something that was triggering that you may not otherwise have had the space to loop in there, because the body has funny ways of expressing itself. And if we're not creating the time and practice to listen to it, it will express in physical ways. It goes from a dull roar to a listen to me. So we want to create awareness in different ways, whatever awareness practices appeal to you and you can build into your lifestyle. Some of these I'm listing here, like having regular meal time with family or friends, having a breathing practice, having meditation if that word speaks to you. And if it doesn't, don't worry about meditation. Movement, connecting with people. And here, connection over connectivity, I simply mean, and it's harder nowadays, but what I mean by that is actually having meaningful connections in person when we can, more in the future, hopefully, but having actual connection is not the same as a quick text or social media connections. Although that can foster real connection or meaningful connection, those are not the same. And it's something that's really a problem today with too much connectivity taking the place of real meaningful connection. And it's, again, us using those tools of connectivity to foster those relationships instead of them using us. Again, whole other topic. Laughter and movement are all important. So our awareness of those negative thoughts, those things that are stressing us out, and what we tell us about ourselves. Like say I become aware of, I'm not good enough to do this. Oh, Patrick, you're running over right now. How on your talk? You're terrible at time management. That may be a thought that comes up in my mind. The RR is really important. So I've become aware. I've recognized what that thought is the first R, and then I reject it. It's not to say that I'm rejecting, like, okay, that's, yeah, maybe I should have managed my time better. But rejecting it in that moment is really powerful. When you say something like, especially unqualified negative thoughts, I'm not good enough. No, just say, I hear that, I reject that. And the more you do that, the more you cast votes, which is why that image is there, of votes, wherever it is on your screen, is the more votes you cast to calm yourself, to be aware of what your surroundings, to be in the moment, to reject negative and harmful thoughts, the more you're going to create space for positive thoughts and gratitude and being calm and being resting and digesting and calming down stress and reducing anxiety. It's those votes you want to cast, and not to be discouraged in the moments where a single vote is not going to tip the ballot. But if you cast it often enough and you put into practice these pieces that can be calming for you, as well as including some of the hormone support, some of the nutrient support in place, removing some of the barriers, that's when you start to get real traction, and you can go from a place of anxiety is dominating my life and it's who I am, it's part of my identity, to it's something I deal with occasionally, and that's okay. Because I've been there, I've done that, and I've helped lots of people do that as well. So I have no doubt you can do it as well, and acknowledging that right now is a harder time. We're having more anxiety, more separation, and more difficulties, and we can get through this together and with extra supports. So thank you all for joining me. I'm going to open the floor up to questions, and at the same time, if you want to fire off any questions, do so. I'll answer them now for those who are still online with me. And I want to introduce a real quick exercise. We won't do it, but if you'd certainly, something I would challenge you to do when we're off the call or while you're listening to the question and answer period here, is under movement, I put shake it. And this is something I learned from this wonderful doctor named Dr. Dennis Wilson, who's an MD down in Florida. And what he'll do is he'll get a big water bottle. So you can get any water bottle, the bigger the better. So like a liter, 2 liter, like one of those like big ones, preferably like not just the small standard one, something big as possible. You can use your own water bottle, fill it mostly with water. I don't have one here. I literally just have some nice preserves from the grist mill in Carmias. A whole other story. But what you do with a bigger water bottle is you take it and you just do this for 1 minute to 2 minutes. Shake it. That alone can calm your nervous system down. It's something you could literally do while you're working, you're taking a call. I mean, better to pause and not take anything else on if possible. But just literally doing this as fast as possible, as fast as you can, with, again, a bigger water bottle, for at least 1 minute, preferably 2, sends a signal to bring your body, you're now focused on this task, you're calming your nervous system down, and you bring yourself into the present, and it actually can significantly calm down your nervous system and reduce cortisol levels. So if the breathing doesn't appeal to you, or you want an alternative to breathing, or to breathe and do something else physical because you feel twitchy, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it. Perfect. Questions for me? You can fire them in the text box there if you haven't already. Don't see any there. Odin, do you see any on your end?
I don't see any that have used the Q&A function. So maybe just really good explanations.
I guess so. Or they were like, wow, that was so much.
Oh, someone raised their hand.
Perfect.
I will allow them to talk.
Excellent. Thank you for being brave.
Hi, I was here last week. I'm Michelle. So hi. I really
Michelle.
enjoyed your talk.
Thank you.
Yeah, I suffer from a lot of stress and anxiety, and a lot of your early memories with work and things, it really resonated with me because it's a similar kind of background that I had. Yeah, so I had to say that. Anyway, we have to go back to your last slide for a second because
Sure.
You said something about eat with your friends, not your enemies. And I'm like,
oh, sure.
Okay, that totally makes sense. What did you mean by that, though?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have. This was probably. I was clearly a 90-minute talk.
No, it's okay.
Rabbit holes a little bit. Yeah, I'm just. Thank you for asking. It was. Sometimes I put these in so that people do ask, "What did he mean?" This came from one of my my nutrition professors, and he was making the point that he said the whole quote from him was better to. He first said it was better to eat hot dogs and fries with your friends than eating beans and rice with your enemies. So, and then he expanded. Okay. What he meant by that is, overly perfect eating isn't always the answer. Although we want to, eat well, lots of whole foods, lots of plant foods, etc. Whenever we can.
Eat what you like, and don't suffer
but
for what you.
Don't let eating be a stressor. And here, he literally means that. And what I mean by that, so thank you very much for asking, and also for being having the bravery to be vulnerable and share with us. Thank you. Because I know it's not easy. But it is both the foods you choose. So overly perfect eating isn't always the answer. It can stress us out, especially if you're already kind of in anxiety. And for me, a flavor of my anxiety used to be like, I used to be quite obsessive as well. So I could become overly obsessed and critical about choosing the right foods. You know, even just like, do you only ever eat organic foods because you want to avoid pesticides? I mean, if you can, and it's not too much of financial stress, if you can find the foods, great. But at the end of the day, as long as you're eating, you know, eating more healthy choices, more fruits and vegetables, and it's not organic, that's okay too, right? But here I also mean, how do you eat? So if you're like sitting at your desk, doing work, distracting yourself, not really sitting and enjoying your food, not creating time to eat, that's another way where if you're sitting there with the stress, the mental stresses and eating, it's going to be detrimental to how you digest and absorb your food. And you'll end up, even if you eat the right amount of B vitamins and minerals on the plate in front of you, if you're eating with your enemies, in the sense stress and negative thoughts, or literally people you don't like, I suppose, it's gonna impact how you absorb those nutrients. And so mealtime, and I struggle with this sometimes with work, is really about creating a time, preferably a regular time during the day, because our nervous system loves regularity. As much as we might rebel against it at times, it would rather have us eating in the same time frame as much as possible, even if it's a small meal, than having it all over the place. And anything we can do to get present and be there with our meal. So before eating, it's a great time to do shaking that bottle, right? Shake up your bottle of food, or have your shaker bottle of a smoothie and do it for a couple minutes, like I said, like really fast, or do a breathing exercise, or have some laughter with a friend, or watch something briefly on your phone. But don't go down, you know, a social media rabbit hole if you can avoid it. But getting to that place where you're actually resting and digesting, you know, I would argue that some form of siesta would be great to actually have time to decompress, because it's, I don't know what your experience has been, but I feel like most people, certainly a lot of workplaces they kind of have this culture of, well, we'll just get this done during our lunch break, or I'll keep cutting into our lunch breaks till we don't have it. So, and that's really unhealthy. It's a real false position to be in, to think that by sacrificing eating well, or eating at all in some cases, because that's when I was under stress, I also wouldn't eat. I would often skip lunch. That we are going to be more productive by sacrificing that time. But instead, what you end up creating is a habit of higher stress. So you're not going to be able to function for as long, and you're definitely not functioning as efficiently. So even knowing you may put in more hours, those hours become a bit of a snowballing problem, where if you're not well fed or absorbing your nutrients well, you're not going to be able to work as well, as be as productive for as long. So it becomes that trap, you know, where you end up putting more and more time with less and less return, essentially. So mealtime is important. Does that answer your question?
No, that was great. And I also have another question about allergy testing. Like, I need to kind of learn more about that, because I seem to have a lot of food sensitivities, and this has been going on for maybe the last 8 years or so. And you said that you had done sort of a food sensitivity test, and you ended up coming back with a long list of foods that you have to avoid or something. Like, how does one go about getting one of those tests, or
so
do you recommend them?
Absolutely, I do. I mean, it's my own bias, but also my own experience as a person, and with my patients, that if anxiety is present, and or digestion is poor, then that's a good time to do a food sensitivity panel. It's a blood test. It could be done in any doctor's office, whether it's your medical doctor or naturopathic doctor. I mean, most medical doctors it's not in their scope of practice to do it. Like, they're just not aware. It's not something they do. So it'd have to be MDs can order it, but they're usually going to be MDs practicing in private pay model, or who have some functional medicine training, unfortunately. So it's good. Short answer would be go to your MD would be the easiest way. There are some like holistic nutritionists who also can order it. I'm not sure if chiropractors do in BC at all.
I'm not sure. I've gone to chiropractors and that's never come up, but I never even thought to ask chiropractors.
Some states they can, but I don't think in BC they have access to that kind of lab work. Traditional Chinese medicine doctors could order it as well, although not common for their type of practice. So that'd be where you can
Could
get
I just
them.
go to a walk-in clinic and ask for that blood test, do you think? Or because I'm not too comfortable with my family doctor at the moment, and
yeah, no, not typically walk-in, not a walk-in. Like you need to know the doctor is doing more functional medicine, which means they're kind of practicing out of the system, unfortunately. But you know, the easiest way would just be to get an ND, and if you want to even write to me after, I'll give you my email address, and we could figure out a way to get that, and I can give you more information about it. Often they're covered if you have any secondary health coverage. The labs are covered, so they are private pay. Even if a medical doctor is willing to order the food sensitivity test for you, it would be like you'd have to pay with either out of pocket or under your health care. So it's not currently covered under BC like MSP.
Okay, well, I think it would be beneficial for both me and my sister to get some sort of test because we seem to both be going through the same sort of issues. So anyway, I think I'll definitely email you after and touch base.
Sounds good. I can provide that to you. And I didn't put it on the screen this time, apologies, but for anyone who's still on, you can get hold of me at Better Now, just the words Better Now, at empowerhealth.ca. Better Now at empowerhealth.ca.
All right.
Yeah, and just put my name there and say, hey, you know, you can put it was in reference to our talk here, or just put some reference there so I can orient and then I can provide you more information. Are you in BC, Michelle, or are you in a different province?
I'm in the Lower Mainland, yes.
Okay, yeah, because I certainly could point you in the direction of an ND near you, or we could just arrange something to get the test for you as well. And same for anyone else who's interested.
Okay, no, that's great. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for the questions. Any other questions that come up, Odin? I don't see any on my end here.
I don't see any other ones.
All right, I guess we'll wrap it up then. Thank you for all who stayed on. And Odin, thanks for staying overtime with me here. Appreciate it. I really appreciate everyone spending the time to be here with me today. If anyone wants a copy of my slides, just send it again an email to betternow@empowerhealth.ca, or reach out to ConnecTogether or the Disability Association, and they can get a hold of me as well to pass that on to you. And if any of you are looking to see a naturopathic doctor, I do virtual consults, so you can see me through the comfort of your own home, but you do need to be within British Columbia. I can't treat outside of the province that I practice in. But even if you are out of the province and looking for an ND, you could let me know and I could recommend a trusted colleague of mine in other parts of Canada. All right, thank you everyone. Thank you again, Odin, for helping on the tech end there. It's always great to have that support. And I look forward to seeing everyone for the next and third and final lecture in the series, or sort of series, that I'm doing. And that one is now on Monday, January 11th. And the topic will be depression is not a bad word. So I'm going to delve into depression a little bit. There will be some crossover as well as some new pieces that we will get into. It's going to be a bit more succinct. I'm not going to go into some of the more in-depth my perspective on mental health necessarily as this anxiety lecture. So join me there for some new content and some review of some of the pieces if you want to hear more about depression. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a happy holidays and a happy new year.